Hello. Welcome to the first episode of the new playlist presenting the book, Science Proclaims Materialism is Dead, From Substantialism to Non-Substantialism, which is available on Amazon and elsewhere. I'll try to follow the table of contents of the book. This episode is devoted to the introduction and general context of the book. The second episode will focus on the relationship between perception and reality and the transition from substantialism to non-substantialism. Then, the third part, and therefore the third episode, will focus on an introduction to contemporary physics, relativistic, quantum computing, and the different interpretations of contemporary physics. The third part of the book emphasizes the informational and processual interpretation of contemporary physics. This interpretation has been developed since the 1960s and 1970s, and especially from the 1980s to the present day. The last part concerns the synthesis, namely the need to transition from a substantialist materialist ontology to a non-substantialist informational and processual ontology. In this episode, we will introduce the general theme of the book. On the one hand, there is the revolution in physics and, on the other, the revolution in computer science, in the sense that computer science is the science of physical information processing systems and not just the science of computers. These two revolutions have merged or integrated. This merger has led to the death of materialism. The theme of the book therefore mainly concerns physics, computer science, and philosophy. The main conclusion of the book is that matter is like a mirage. It is an illusion, but the most persistent and dangerous of illusions. It is important to note that modern science and philosophy, and the modern era in general, from the 17th to the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, led to the conclusion that only matter really exists. This is the foundation of materialism. At the beginning of the 20th century, science, philosophy, and culture declared the definitive victory of materialism over all other worldviews, namely dualism, pantheism, panpsychism, idealism, monotheism, etc. This domination of materialism led to the construction of a materialistic civilization, a materialistic world system, and a materialistic world in general. It should be emphasized that modern and contemporary materialism is not a new phenomenon. In fact, Western materialistic civilization is, in a sense, a reincarnation of Greco-Roman materialistic civilization. In a nutshell, according to materialism, only matter really exists, and therefore the mind, morality, ethics, spiritual values, God, religion, etc. no longer have any ontological basis. One can believe in them, of course, but they no longer have, shall we say, a scientific and philosophical basis, since science and philosophy defended materialism. In general, the horizon of the materialistic person is the material world, material well-being, and of course the self/ego and the satisfaction of one's goals, pleasures, desires, etc. So in general, what we see is a growth in closed-minded, egocentric consciousness and a decline and neglect of open-minded, spiritual consciousness. It is also important to note that the contemporary world, from the beginning of the 20th century to the present day, has been shaped by materialism, coupled with Darwinism, capitalism, individualism, and consumerism. In fact, there has been a mutual reinforcement of these different axes. For example, materialism has reinforced Darwinism, and Darwinism has reinforced materialism. Likewise, materialism has reinforced capitalism, and capitalism has reinforced materialism, and so on. There has been the development of an interdependent system, which is the current global system in which we live, and also the development of a global civilization that is essentially materialistic. This system has created a vicious cycle of overexploitation, overproduction, and overconsumption, with, of course, many negative and disastrous consequences, namely conflicts, injustices, imperialism, colonialism, violence, wars, disasters, destruction, climate change, and so on. Currently, all of humanity lives under the sway of this global system, and this system is leading humanity and the biosphere, the Earth, to massive, if not total self-destruction. The book, Science Proclaims Materialism is Dead, does not address this issue. Another book is planned that will deal with this theme in detail, within the general framework of the history of worldviews, but it is important to emphasize the link between materialism and the current global system. If materialism is so important and occupies such a significant and crucial place, it is important to ask the following fundamental question: is materialism true? Is it the last word in metaphysics and the search for reality? Fortunately, it is not the last word, and it is not true. In fact, it is a serious and dangerous mistake. It is important to emphasize the importance of worldviews in general. Worldviews shape the human mind, both individually and socially, and the human mind shapes the physical, human, and social worlds, hence the crucial importance of worldviews. Every period in history shows the major impact of worldviews on individuals, communities, societies, and cultures. The modern and contemporary period shows the major impact of materialism. It is the dominant worldview in all contemporary communities and societies and, of course, in our physical and social world. Fortunately, alongside the hegemony of materialism and the current world system, we see that contemporary science and philosophy have undergone major revolutions at all levels. There have been revolutions in contemporary science, in physics, biology, psychology, sociology, etc. There have also been revolutions in epistemology in general, major paradigmatic revolutions, namely the revolution and development of the paradigm of dynamic information processing systems and the development of the paradigm of open, nonlinear, chaotic, and complex systems, and of course the use of these two paradigms in contemporary science to study the different levels of existence, namely the physical, biological, psychological, social, and cosmological levels. The combination of these two revolutions has led to a major metaphysical revolution, namely the conclusion that matter does not really exist and that it is therefore important to move from substantialism to non-substantialism. This general theme is dealt with in the next book. We present it here just to outline the general framework of the book. Science, Physics, proclaims materialism is dead, from substantialism to non-substantialism. The great discovery of science and contemporary philosophy in general is that the world is not made of matter and substance, but of energy in the sense of activity and nested and interconnected dynamic systems. What does this mean? It means, among other things, that matter is only an appearance, a mirage, an illusion, and therefore materialism is a disastrous error. Of course, it also means that the current world system and world civilization are based on the most dangerous of all the errors committed by humanity, and so unfortunately we are living in and according to a great and serious error and illusion. The truth is therefore elsewhere, it is not in materialism-substantialism. All this shows the crucial importance of studying how science, and physics in particular, declares the death of materialism. This is really very important. Everyone is called upon to make the necessary effort to learn about this fundamental reality, not just specialists such as physicists, philosophers, and intellectuals. Everyone is called upon to make the necessary effort to understand this fundamental reality, namely that physics declares the death of materialism. This great discovery is not known, or is little known to the general public. Why? The reason is quite simple. It is because a revolution against the current world system and against the current materialistic world civilization should be avoided. Let us now consider the content of the book. Science proclaims materialism is dead. This book deals with contemporary physics, the revolution in contemporary physics on the one hand, and the epistemological revolution, namely the development of the information processing paradigm and the joining of the two, on the other. As Gleick points out, physicists and information theorists are increasingly becoming one. Indeed, the merging of the two revolutions took place during the 20th century and continues to this day. This fusion has led to a fundamental metaphysical revolution, namely that matter does not exist, and that substantialism must be rejected, and non-substantialism developed. The universe is not made up of matter or material objects or substance, but of energy understood as activity, action,